Governor McKee, with the question of not-for-profit status for so many Rhode Island organizations, it was a great idea to extend the deadline. At the same time, given the sheer volume of not-for-profits that have excessive corporate salaries, I mean, three names come to mind that everyone would know, where the executive director on a not-for-profit makes in excess of $250,000 a year. Is it time for Rhode Island to reevaluate the process so that in cases like those organizations or a hospital where a seven-figure salary and benefits package is put to an executive, can they be construed in any way as not-for-profit, and should they realize the benefits of being a not-for-profit?
Yeah, so I would just give a shout out to our not-for-profits over the last, certainly over the last 15, 18 months for stepping up. The point of it here was to create, to actually address an issue that we got slow out of the gates, certainly under my watch, in terms of notification, and we corrected that. And so now we're going to give everybody that 60 days. That's not in the same category as what you're talking about. That's up to the boards that run those organizations, and they need to make sure that they continue to qualify as nonprofits, you know, in terms of federal guidelines and the IRS and that type of thing.
No, I understand that. It is up to the boards. But at a certain point, the State of Rhode Island Department of Revenue is clearly entitled to make their own decisions. And clearly, you know, when you have people making over a 5 or 6 period over $1 million, quote unquote, helping the poor, isn't that egregious?
Well, again, we took, you know, we took action because of the 8,000 you know, nonprofits that had come to a deadline. We don't want them to lose their nonprofit status in any way, shape, or form, because they are important to our state.
Governor, I think I heard you say that you met yesterday with the leadership of DCYF and Health and Human Services?
This morning.
This morning.
Yeah, which was a pre-scheduled event. That wasn't because of the death of the child, but it was already scheduled on the calendar.
And you said that the death of this child impacted them in a significant way. Would you amplify on that, please? And are you satisfied with the way things are running over at DCYF?
I met dozens of people who are employed at DCYF today, as I'm going to do around the state, as I did as a mayor, which was make sure we're connecting in with the people who are doing the work. Yes, they're dedicated. You know, systems can always improve. That's one of the reasons that, you know, that there's an investigation going on right now with the Westerly Police and the DCYF on that particular instance. But I would also say, yes, the work that is done there, any professional that is impacted in a way that through a tragedy like that is impacted. I would expect them to be, and they were. I mean, they clearly had a, they clearly were impacted emotionally by that event. And so, but at the same point in time, that doesn't stop us from, waiting on the information before we, make any statements about how it occurred and what responsibility there might be over the death.
Respectfully, Governor, first death of a child in DCYF care on your watch.
Yeah.
Did they offer any suggestions or?
Well, I can tell you that it was not a good day yesterday, to hear that news, and I did mention that when I was setting up the meeting a few weeks back that, I wanted to have that meeting before something did happen. It just happened that the timing was exactly the time that I met with the staff and the personnel there. So we don't want, anybody who loses an individual in their family, regardless of the circumstances, whether it was COVID or yes, Sunday evening in Westerly, we value every life. And so from that point of view, yes, it is emotional, and it should be. And if it's not, then we got the wrong people that are actually doing the job.
All right, we'll go to Patrick and Bill, and then we'll make our way over that side.
Governor, you mentioned earlier that you were hoping to use some of the federal rescue money in the summer. I believe lawmakers are not coming back until fall. Do you have something in mind that you want to ask them or want them to do to allow you to use that money?
So my conversations, which has been regularly, including this morning with the speaker, is about there's about $113 million of infrastructure money that's going to become available that I believe that we're going to need to take some action this summer. So once I understand exactly what the guidelines are that we need to get approval on. My intention is to work with the General Assembly before any of those dollars are spent, so that there is a buy-in from our General Assembly, House, and Senate on how those dollars are used. So, but we're going to be up against a timeline on that $113 million, and I think that it is an appropriate time, too, to put our best case forward to release some of the $1.1 billion, not only in to keep the economy flowing, but addressing some of the family issues that are front and center, as well as some of the housing issues that the Lieutenant Governor referred to. So we'll see how it'll make out. But in order to get that $113 million, and if the General Assembly would like to put a blessing on it, we're going to have to do something this summer.
Do you have a plan in place for what you would use that money on if they okay it?
We're still working on the guidelines on that, but I would think that the health lab was a front and center issue, that, so a portion of the dollars. Tomorrow we'll be talking about the Eleanor Slater and the Zambarano in particular. Those are top priorities relative to infrastructure right now. It's not $113 million, not a small amount of money, but it'll only be helping in a few projects. But those are two things that are on my mind at the moment.
Governor, with the explosion of Airbnbs here in Rhode Island, particularly on Aquidneck Island, there's three issues that keep coming up: displacement or the lack of housing stock that it creates, noise and other disruption, and also from the Hospitality Association, who are concerned about it impacting hotel revenue. Your position, your overall thought on Airbnbs, and how, I don't know, through executive order or anything else, is there a way that your administration can sort of try to get a hold of this or get out in front of it?
So as a mayor, I think these are local issues that I think that can be coordinated on the local level. If Newport is looking for some level of assistance from our office, I was down there more than once in the last few weeks meeting with the mayor and other elected officials. So I think that topic came up in a way that was troublesome, but I thought, my understanding is they're going to try to approach that locally. As far as the impact that it has on local business, if you're in business, you've got to act like you're in business. And so if you're in business and you're actually doing business, but you're doing business, under the table, so to speak, we shouldn't put up with that. Everybody needs to be on a level playing field when they're operating a small business or business in the state, and everybody should be paying their fair share, because, as I've always said, as a mayor, if somebody's paying too little, then somebody's paying too much, right? And the reverse is true. So everybody should be carrying their weight, and in fact, they're not. I think that locally, and if the state needs to step in, it should, to make sure there's a level playing field in terms of the lodging issue that you just talked about, Bill.
So you would categorize Airbnbs or short-term rentals as small businesses, at least in terms of...
I do, as long as they conduct themselves as a small business and they're reporting their income and they're paying taxes on that income, and that, to me, that's a part of the economy. I've said also, look, there's a place here for big business, mid-sized businesses, and small business. It's not a zero-sum game where you help one and you hurt another. I believe across the board you can help everyone, but they got to be honest about it. They can't be conducting business operations, taking advantage of the revenue and not participating in the cost to operate our municipalities or our state.
Governor, last Wednesday night there was a high-profile shooting. 3 teenagers going to get a pizza. Yes. Honor roll students. Off-duty Pawtucket police officer shoots the driver, 18 years old. If that bullet had traveled 2 inches closer, it would have probably struck his heart. Are you being updated on the course of that investigation?
Other than the fact that it's going on, I don't have any more details than what was reported initially. I would say, though, after the investigation, if it's warranted, I'm confident the officer will be charged and held accountable.
And just a quick question about water fire. It's terrific. However, there's definitely a perception where, because of the riots last year and the violent protests, people are intimidated about Providence. Now, in New York City, they had a shooting over the weekend, and Mayor de Blasio talked about flooding the zone in Times Square. is there any talk, would that be a state thing or city thing, that perhaps there should be more police visible to make people feel comfortable about coming back into Providence?
Yeah, so we're on the record stating that we have offered assistance to the city of Providence through our state police on a program for the summer that will be federally funded. We're still waiting for an answer on that right now. So in terms of having additional support in the community, we'll certainly stand ready to do that. I've had conversations with the chief and others about multiple issues, like you said, like you were referring to. And I'll use this opportunity again to say this is not the time to separate our community from our policing. This is the time to connect with our community and our policing. And no matter where it is, that we need to do that. So Providence should be a place that's safe for people to go. And we rely on, in particular, our police work to do that, in addition to other civic organizations with the Violence Institute and others. But we need to partner in and do it in a way that makes sense. Providence has been a safe place to be, over the last year and a half. It's been a little bit more, it has turmoil. But that's not a reason why people shouldn't feel safe coming down to Waterfire. As the Lieutenant Governor said, it's an economic driver, but it is a source of pride, right, for Rhode Island to be celebrating, at an event like that. You just have to be attending it and to understand that it is a source of pride for Rhode Island, and we make sure that people feel safe when they're there, and I'm confident that they will be safe during those events and beyond that as we reopen Providence.
Katie and then Brian. Governor, DHS announced yesterday that they're re-upping the contract with Deloitte. I know it's something that you followed when we had the issues with the UHIP system and Rhode Island bridges. Why re-up the contract with Deloitte given their checkered past?
Yeah, so I think that is a very good question because I asked the same question, and then when the recommendation came to extend the agreement with Deloitte, I asked to meet with the Deloitte leadership. I did that last week. We had a very direct conversation about the issues. At the point of time, there was a consideration for a 5-year agreement with two-year extensions. I made it clear that I wouldn't sign a 5-year agreement. We signed a 3-year agreement. That will be executed, I believe, on the Deloitte side very shortly, with 3 2-year extensions. But I do want to say this, and I did meet with DHS today, and I talked to the staff about this in particular. And why would we tell the people to feel comfortable about that? I think that we're really doing well right now. We hit, again, I don't really like, the national rankings are great, but we really did some really significant things in terms of, in a pandemic, working virtually, getting benefits out to people in the state of Rhode Island, virtually without a blip. There has not been a whole lot of complaints on that. I mean, there's always ways to improve. But that's a function of the fact that Deloitte's got it right. But they also assured me that, and I believe it's part of the agreement, that any promises they made, and they did apologize, quite frankly, with me directly for that, that time frame when things were really very disruptive, right? But they did promise me that any commitments they made in terms of any of the penalties that were promised, those were going to be fulfilled. And I felt as though that when we made it a 3-year agreement with 3 2-year extensions, that my anticipation based on where they are right now, well, that's what we have to work with, right? Where we are right now, and what is in the best interest of the people of the state right now. I think it is in the best interest of the state to have it extended, and make sure that the working relationship there continues in a way that DHS told me this morning is currently in place. And then we're looking for, to extend those agreements, and we're going to hold Deloitte accountable, and we're going to keep our end of the bargain, and we're going to make sure we pay them for the work that they do based on the quality of that work. My anticipation is going to be high.
Do you think we could get to a point where we would approach these big IT projects like this one with UHIP or at the DMV in a different way, try to do it locally, maybe not go with these gigantic corporations, because it seems like this has been an issue for Rhode Island time and time again?
Yeah, so the process on that the request for proposals of the RFP was very open. The amount of people who actually applied were very small. This is a very complicated issue. And when we, I believe it was in terms of the food for the kids in the schools, we were the first ones in the country to actually make sure that that was going smoothly. What's that program called? Anybody want to weigh in? But that was represented today. So I think it's, when you get into these areas which are very complicated, we're ready to, DCYF, for instance, I put in the budget, and I believe that we put in, I think there's standing right now about $50 million of IT support. We're still on, the back of a napkin on our payroll systems, which is disturbing. DCYF has not had an upgrade on their computer since 1998. This is a big problem for us, and that when I was in the budget process, I said that we can't have that. So we'll go out to the open market. These are really important things, and then we'll try to select the best people. And I always believe that you give preference to quality, qualifications that meet the standards that we need to meet that would be an in-state. And you'll see more and more about that happening from our travel agents, working with our state travel, with our local travel agents. And where we can apply it, we're going to try to do it over a period of time to make sure that we are taking care of our local businesses.
All right, we got Brian, Nancy, Ed, Anita.
Governor, on the investigation into the death of the 2-year-old, I know it's early on. Did you get any indication in your meeting with DCYF that there was a lack of oversight, a lack of staffing, or anything that would need to be addressed on that end early on? Any indication of that?
No, the only thing I would say on that is that, and I have to kind of like beg off on my experience on it, but there is a certain amount of data and evidence that says that as we place young people, placing it inside the family makes sense. So that was the case here. So that was not a defense, but it was an explanation of why why these 2 young people were with a grandparent, which has been reported, right? So so anyways, no, in detail, no, and quite frankly, I think it would be very irresponsible for me to make any assumptions or any conclusions before the report's in. I have very high confidence in our policing as a former mayor and the police chiefs and to do the investigation. Our state police stands prepared to help out in that investigation if we are asked. And I think that DCYF is, unfortunately has had the experience of these things over periods of time. They're going to give a very strong look at it in terms of what policies might have done wrong, if any did, and what going forward, what should it look like. But I think it's very important that there's a tremendous amount of very good work that's happened at DCYF, and the people that I met are very dedicated to that job. So I don't think on one tragedy you turn things upside down, but I think you learn from it and you try to figure out how to make things better. And that was the basis of my conversation with multiple directors that were there that are, working in many different capacities.
On water fire and the funding, how were you able to get the money for that? And should really any program be lacking for money at this point with all the federal stimulus dollars that are coming in? Should people be wrong in assuming that there's basically money for everything to hand out at this point and no programs should be in jeopardy?
No, I think that's a wrong assumption. I think you invest in programs that you get return on, right? And that makes sense for the state. Water fire makes sense. My understanding is that there was about $150,000 that was available in commerce right now that could be applied towards this tourism factor. And then we will search out for the other $150,000 to make good on the $300,000. But no, there's $1.2 billion sounds a lot, but inside the context of the work that needs to be done, it's a small amount. So we have to be very calculating and very intentional about how to get the most benefit from that.
And just finally, I know you have a separate event tomorrow on Eleanor Slater, but why the turnover at the top there? Do you expect that that'll make a big difference in changing the culture there?
Yeah, so that was one of them was a resignation that we have accepted with Dr. Daly. And then another person that we have put on paid leave because we believe that it's in the best interest of both Zambrano and Eleanor Slater to do that. So I had indicated a few weeks back that I would anticipate that would be some staff changes. We'll have more about that tomorrow in terms of where we think that goes. But, yeah, I think that in the case of Dr. Daly, he provided us a resignation. We accepted it. We thank him for his service. We wish him the best as he moves forward on his professional career. But we got a job to do here, and we need to address the report that we received recently. I can tell you, and I can report that I did meet with Director Shrest last night towards the end of the evening, 7, 8 o'clock, and he feels very confident that we're going to meet the corrections that were in the adjustments and the maintenance that was pointed out in that report that will be within the 23 days that we had a week ago Friday.
On Eleanor Slater, so was Jennifer White's administrative leave related to the Joint Commission's report on that hospital?
Ask it again, please.
So the interim CEO who was placed on administrative leave of Eleanor Slater, can you say at least whether her placement on administrative leave was related to the Joint Commission's report?
I think that I'll let that go through personnel before I make any real public comments. But yes, I think it is in the restructuring of Eleanor Slater and in particular Zambrano. There's been a subject of this sessions that we've had over several weeks, right? So we know that that change is needed, and there's different reasons for changes in terms of personnel, but we're going to do everything we can to get that right on behalf of the patients and the families and the staffing that's there. And I think you'll see that indicated when we get together tomorrow. You can ask those more direct questions of the people who are making those decisions that I have faith in that those are good decisions.
Okay, and on WaterFire, the managing director had told me yesterday morning they asked for $400,000 from Commerce and they got approved for $300,000. Why the $1,000 short or $100,000
Well, the number that came to me was $300,000, and I understand that there's going to be some consideration from the Providence City Council to revisit the issue. I'm not sure that's going to happen or not, but that's what I was told. So the number I was asked about $300,000, and I saw that there was a path to fund that in a way that made sense, so that's what I supported.
Governor, we're in the waning days of the legislative session here, so I just want to get your action in 3 areas. The House Speaker said the Leopold bill is they were unable to reach consensus, might not go forward this year, so I'd like to get your thoughts on that. 3 gun bills are going forward, but not the high-capacity magazines, so I want to get your thoughts on that. And then, there was also a bill to regulate the forever chemicals, PFAS, and do you have any concerns about the cost for municipalities on that area?
Okay, so in order on what we call that, the Bill of Rights bill, right? I think that there was really good movement both on, again, going back to connecting community with the policing. I thought there was some pretty good movement based on the Police Chiefs Association, the union, and the General Assembly. So I'm disappointed that we don't have an improvement there. I supported that, that move. But I'll take it up, if there's a reconvening in the fall, which the Speaker has suggested may happen, or in the next session. So we don't want to lose momentum on that, because I think that the parties really did work together to try to address an issue that needs to be addressed, and which is accountability with our policing needs to be addressed. The second issue, gun bills, yes. So again, I did support the gun bills. I'm pleased that the indication that there's going to be passage on a few of the bills, including one of the ones that the Attorney General was really very adamant about, is in terms of making mass purchases and distributing those guns to people who may or may not entitled to those guns. So I'm happy that that's there, and I think the work continues, and in a way that gun safety is a front and center issue, as one of the questions that was just asked right now in Providence. As far as the and I don't know the term, but the water quality issue, I think that right now the report that I got, and we have one of our people that does public policy do a fairly good review of that a few weeks back. Plus, I think as early as Monday I had that. So I think that on the issues in terms of I believe it's like I don't know how to term it, but 20 parts. You know, the 20 level of will impact very few communities, if any. I believe it's the potentially URI may get impacted. And my town of Cumberland could potentially get impacted if they open up a well that has been closed, but I don't think that we're going to, based on my knowledge of that, we're probably not reopening that. So I don't think it's going to have any serious impact. I can tell you that I do work directly with my former superintendent of water, that he works on the Rhode Island Board of Superintendents, and I have been engaged in those conversations. So I think that's a safe place to go. And if the General Assembly chooses not to pass it, then we'll bring that up with the with DEM, and we'll work through our health department.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. When are you going to put the regulations in place? The Raimondo administration have been working on it, then the pandemic hit, and they said we're too busy.
Yeah.
Is that something that's going to be front and center for you if they don't pass a bill this week?
Yes, I think that it is, and I think that it makes sense. When we actually measure against the bordering states, we're competitive with bordering states on that measure. I think it's a safe place to go, and I think it's worth going there because it's something that we can address right now, and it doesn't have a serious financial impact on water users in the state. We don't really want to put a whole bunch of burden on them at the moment, but we do want to be safe.
All right, we got time for a couple more. Anita and then Richard. Hi, Governor. Do you feel hamstrung by the legislature for not letting you spend the American Rescue Plan Act money without their permission, unlike what other states are doing?
Well, I don't feel hamstrung because I agreed to that. I think that it makes sense to engage the General Assembly in a way that they weren't engaged last year. They're elected from all different parts of the state, all 39 cities and towns. So it creates. It's going to take more work, but I think in the end, I think that I think it makes sense. Will I be advocating, as I just said earlier? First of all, we're not going to let that $113 million go out the window. We're going to use that for something in infrastructure in the state, and I'll be working with the General Assembly to make sure we don't miss that opportunity. At the same time, my plan is to come back with with an ask for as much as a couple $100 million to keep the economy going strategically, to work on some housing issues, some family issues, certainly some hospitality issues. The industries who have been really impacted severely, they're still recovering. And we have this really good opportunity right now to be that state that is not the first in and last out of downturns. But we have to actually invest the dollars to make that happen. So I'll be building that case, and hopefully that will get support from the Speaker and the President and the General Assembly.
And in regards to tomorrow's announcements regarding school reopening, any preview you can give us in regards to that guidance ahead of the fall?
Other than I've been saying the reason that we vaccinated teachers and we vaccinated workers in the schools, childcare, right out of the chute, certainly a little bit of second guessing on that, but there was the right thing to do. We're in a position to reopen our schools safely, and now we're at about, I think the number was, I'm going to give the wrong number, but I think we're approaching 50% right now, or 60% of the 16 to 18-year-olds that are vaccinated, and then we're about 43%, I think, on the 12 to 15, the last figures I've seen. So we got work to do there to make sure that, as the Commissioner said, which I support, I think that students that are vaccinated won't be wearing masks. I think that the Commissioner spoke about that. We want to clarify that tomorrow formally. But yes, we got to keep on getting people vaccinated, and I believe that the students will be back in the classroom, not only on K through 12, but also on the higher ed, which now I think everyone but one university right now is making a mandate for their students to be in the classroom to be vaccinated. So we think that that's really very supportive of our effort to get people vaccinated.
And the kids that aren't vaccinated, under 12, masks?
Yeah, we're going to follow whatever the current CDC guidance is. Following the science is important. Certainly, we don't want to be taking any risks over and above what that looks like, that advisory look like. That could change, over time, and also younger kids could potentially be vaccinated, and that's something that certainly is being tested in terms of making sure whether it's safe or not. And if the guidance comes out that we want to vaccinate youngsters, we will. I mean, we do measles, we do chickenpox, we do, young people are vaccinated. So if that makes us safer, then we're going to support that.
Governor, one of the things that seems to have been lost in the shuffle is how to proceed forward on building a new public health laboratory in Rhode Island. It was originally supposed to be part of a bond in March, and then it got dropped. There was some talk about putting it in the budget, and then it got dropped. And I was wondering about how you would define the priority to get something like that done, because it's so critical to preserving the public health infrastructure in Rhode Island.
Yeah, so I agree. I think that the first thing to do is location. We have to get everybody on board on where it's located. So we're still looking at analysis in terms of site work. I think we need to extend it past state-owned sites. That's what I've requested too, so that's all in terms of the strategy. And then I think that we are in a really fortunate spot where we either could go for bonding, but that would take time, or we can use infrastructure dollars that are federally appropriated to address that issue. So I think that we will make progress on that, and it's a priority to me because we know that coming out of this pandemic that a up-to-date health lab is going to be really important to the health of the people in the state of Rhode Island as we move forward. And it also opens up the potential for some public-private partnerships as well that could participate there.
All right, we can get one more question.
Right here.
Patrick? Oh, Ray didn't have a question. I'll come to you.
Is this going to be a press conference just McKee talking?
Hold on,
What about
hold
the Lieutenant
on.
Governor?
We need
Ask the
to,
Lieutenant Governor. She's here for questions, and
Oh,
she
but
has
everybody else has to ask a question to the Lieutenant Governor.
asked
That's
the
not
Lieutenant
fair.
Governor a question,
Explain
Ray.
so something up. Talk
make
about what you
something
did
up.
yesterday in Smithfield. What is the phone number that people had to call for help from Rhode Island Housing?
So I think I mentioned that during my comments earlier. So I went to Smithfield to see development of affordable housing, 42 units of affordable housing in a community that traditionally, when I think about it, it's not the one that you think about it when you're thinking about affordable housing. So it was important for me to go there and to see that it's possible, and the type of development that was done is an excellent development, the quality of the housing and in the look. So I just went there to see that affordable housing is possible everywhere.
Yeah, I'll put a little add-in on that, too, is that I got a nice thank you note. I mean, all these issues are important, especially where the money, $200 million for rental assistance right now and utility assistance. $50 million going to be released tomorrow or June 30th for mortgage assistance that could help people up to $50,000 worth on their mortgage assistance as well. And there's another $150 million coming. So we want to make sure that the money goes out. That was one of the topics that I had at DHS today, to really make it very clear that those dollars are important, that we get those out, and we will. And I got a nice, I did sign an extension of the moratorium for low-income housing in particular on the utilities, and I got a nice thank you note from the George Wiley Center. And I just want to make that, because there was some scuttlebutt that the Wiley Center wasn't in favor of the extension, and they were. And we're going to keep on working on that way. But that's not an excuse to people who are watching. If you're having trouble with your utility bills, the moratorium doesn't forgive it. But these dollars that we got that are coming from the federal government can go backwards to last year, to I think January of this, or February to last year, and pay your past utilities. So we're going to be outreaching, but there is a responsibility on the people who are in those circumstances, either having trouble with their utilities or their rent, and soon to be with their mortgages, that they need to be proactive on this. We're going to do our best we can to let you know what is happening, but you need to be proactive to take advantage of these opportunities.
We gotta make Rhode Island housing also more friendly, because sometimes they think they are the boss and they don't want to promote the information. And you need to push Rhode Island housing to be more approachable to all the community, because everybody gonna need help. It's on you to make sure that Rhode Island Housing is doing. Or put a press conference together with Rhode Island Housing to promote the $200 million.
Yeah, we just had a press conference for that, but right now I'm connecting all the different people out there. And I'll say, if you own a number of apartments that are in that category, or you're a housing authority, we'll bring the mayors in. We just, we're going to bring the mayors into this discussion. If you're working in any of the, and I was on the call yesterday with Family Resources, right, around Family Resources, and I also challenged them. They're working with a number of people. We got to get the word out because we don't want this money to go back to D.C. That money belongs to us. That's money that we sent to Washington, so they've sent it back to us. We don't want to give up any of those dollars. Thank you.